Welcome everybody. We are live. We are at our third live event. So thank you those of you who have jumped on already. I see there's quite a few of you already on. I have an amazing guest. You guys are going to be shocked by when I start telling you some of the numbers about what Kristan Cole has accomplished. This event, you guys, is made for our rainmakers. So those of you who are on this live event, this is strictly value for you guys. We set this up with you guys in mind. We want you guys to be asking questions in the chat. If you don't ask questions, I've got a whole bunch that I want to pick Kristan's brain on. So please start sending your questions in, and I'll be introducing Kristan here shortly. We've got 5 market centers on this call across Wisconsin and Minnesota. And those of you who are watching this, if you guys aren't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. 76% of the people watching our videos and our content right now, trying to add value in our agents' lives, are not subscribed. So you guys don't know actually when we post our next event. So please, 76% of you guys aren't subscribed. Please jump on, subscribe. If you like what you learned today, at the end, I highly encourage you guys to drop a like on the video and thank Kristan for, she's given us an hour of her time. We're incredibly grateful for it. And just tell her thank you as we round this out. So with that, I will get right into a little bit about Kristan. I've known Kristan for a couple of years. We've talked on a couple different occasions, and every time I talk with her, I am blown away. You guys, she has grown from selling in Alaska to 45 locations. She is going to do approximately 600 million this year with her team and over 2,000 transactions. To put that in a little bit of perspective for you guys, her individual team would compete heavily with our Green Bay Market Center. So she's a beast. She's awesome. She consistently ranks in the top 10 teams at Keller Williams. I think she reminded me she was number 4 right before this call. So last year, and right now she's consistently in the top 50 teams in the U.S. So Kristan, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us, I gave a really quick intro, kind of super high level, but tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us who you are. Tell us what's important to you.
So just quickly, maybe in a minute or two, about my story. I grew up in Alaska, and at the age of 12, I actually became homeless. And so that was a huge driver for me. And I was the first one to go to college, and I actually got my degree in finance and real estate. I started at 22. I became a broker owner of a RE/MAX franchise at 24. And then I bought a second franchise when I was in my 30s. I had 5 children by the time I was 31. And I just continued to grow my business there. Alaska is kind of, we're certainly geographically disconnected from the US by a big country called Canada. And so I felt a little bit like an island. Didn't really feel like there was a lot to tap into because we just didn't have what we have today. You have to remember, when I started in real estate, there were no cell phones, there were no computers, there were no fax machines. So let's just be real. So, but continue to grow myself as much as humanly possible, read tons of books, both on parenting and on real estate. And then in 1998, I was at a conference and heard of this guy named Howard Britton. And he was the one that really I first talked to in terms of starting to build a team. Built a team, and we were, the last year I was really doing a lot of listings was 2005. So within about 5 years, we closed, in that 2005, we closed 355 transactions, 56 million. And I went on over 500 listing appointments that year. My son was in a really terrible car accident. And so I didn't go back to work for 6 months. And then I went back part-time after that. And what I learned is that the value of working with and through other people, that my team just continued to chug along and did really well. And then when my last daughter graduated from high school, Gary Keller asked me to come to Austin, Texas, and he had me take the AVA, which I had no idea what that was all about, and asked me to kind of really get in. And I just moved to the company. I moved to Keller Williams in 2009 after being with RE/MAX for 25 years. And So started down that process, became a regional director and for the Southwest region, obviously, and then vice president of expansion for 5 years. I made a 5-year commitment to Gary on that. And then since during that time, I became an investor in 5 market centers. I'm an OP of 2 of them. And I own a couple title companies and a big 501c3 called Kristan's Home of Hope.
Let's talk real quick about your charity. Tell me a little bit more about what it is, what's like kind of how is it here and why is it important to you?
So it was important to me that we could actually benefit any community that we were in. So really trying to figure out, and then I wanted to be something I was super passionate about. And given that I had been homeless and had some challenges growing up, we started what we called Kristan's Home of Hope. So when you buy or sell with the Kristan Cole Real Estate Network, you're supporting safe housing for at-risk youth. There's a lot of reasons that you might be at risk as a youth, and one of them would be homelessness, drugs, alcohol addiction. There's lots of reasons that you end up homeless or at risk. And so that was I was really passionate about it. And our first year, and I say we only raised about $47,000 our first year because I knew how to sell real estate, but I didn't know how to raise money, And so I had the opportunity to spend 4 days in the Highlands in North Carolina with John Maxwell. And I had a whole laundry list of questions when I got there. And he really helped me think differently about how to raise money and how I could go about it. And so the second year that we were really purposeful about raising money, we raised $175,000. And so that allowed us to help a lot more people. And so now I told him I want to learn to raise $1 million. So I'm still a work in progress on that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's totally great. All right, you guys, those of you who are watching, I see you guys dropping comments in. Thank you so much. Start dropping comments specifically about questions that you have for Kristan. I'll grab the ones that I can and shoot them over to her. But Kristan, real quick, like what made you decide to do a team? Like what you had a team, or it sounded like you were going on 500 listing appointments. Like, was it strictly the leverage piece? And I'll let you kind of run with that.
It was definitely the leverage piece because I would go on vacation as a family, and my kids told me how much they hated real estate because it was consuming. They'd be down at the pool, and I'd run up to the room because that was before cell phones, and I'm on the phone, and it was just like such a disaster. And so that was just the way it was. When I started building a team, an interesting thing is then my kids, they were like, wow, you have a life now, Mom. And, I never missed anything of any of my kids, any of their events or anything like that. But I will say this, I was really super committed to my business, and I really only had 3 big rocks. That was my family, going to, my church, we went to church few times a week and my business. And so people say, well, don't you miss not being highly social out in the community? And I did things for the community, but I just didn't feel I just wasn't compelled to go to like the Chamber of Commerce get-togethers and things like that. I just felt like I have 5 kids and I had a big responsibility and a short period of time to nurture them. And so people would probably say I had a very boring 25 years, but to me, so now I have my youngest daughter, when she graduated from college, she double majored in hotel hospitality management. And so a couple of years after she graduated, she actually interviewed with me to become our director of events. And so now she runs all of our events, all of our charity projects, and she's really just an awesome person. And my oldest daughter actually took over my hub in Alaska, and she is the lead up there. So a couple of my kids actually got him, and my other son, he does fix and flips and things like that. So a lot of them got involved in real estate, but they didn't until they saw that you could actually have a life, because they felt like I worked too hard.
Yeah, they got to see kind of that testament to watching you work really, really hard, getting a team together, building a business, and then all of a sudden detaching your time from the success of your company and letting that grow, which is, that is great. That is awesome. What was like the biggest, so let's just go from a lot of people have teams, maybe either take it down expansion road, or like, what what advice would you give rainmakers who are sitting kind of currently where they are? Maybe they're selling, 75, 150, 200 homes. Like what advice would you have for those people really wanting to scale their business up?
I would ask yourself, are you living the life you're capable of? And that doesn't mean you have to work harder, but you need to lead. And and that means if you're going to build a team, you have the responsibility to be the leader. And so the question is, are you working harder on yourself than anyone else? Are you becoming the leader that you need to become in order to attract the talent that you really want and need? And so if you don't have that talent, then you really have to look in the mirror and say, am I becoming the leader that I need to be in order to attract the talent that sees me as their vehicle to get where they want to go? So really, if you're going to build a team, then it wasn't really with the team where I discovered this. It was absolutely with expansion. And that is, I needed to become a much better leader. Because when you aren't showing up physically every day, boy, communication and leading, it's a lot harder. And so that's what I would say is, if you really want to build a big business, Gary said this to me, and when he said it the first time, he didn't say it to me, he said it to all of us. I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, you have to get small to get big. And what he really means is you've got to narrow your focus to get big. And what that also means is when you become the leader of your team and your organization, it's your responsibility to make sure that you are leading your people, that you are having the 411s with them, that you've done the life story on them, and you've done the motivational piece so that you know where they want to go. So, because it's your responsibility to help them get there. Because people think that they leave your team because, they learned how to sell real estate from you and they don't need you anymore and they want to make more money. It's not why they leave. They leave because they believe that your whole life is tied up in what you want, and they're just the train to get you there, instead of your whole life being in what they want and making sure that they get there. Because if they get there, trust me, you get there too. And it just took a lot. I had to learn a lot with expansion, that when you're showing up every day in the office doesn't seem as obvious. You have to become really intentional about your leadership. So I really dove into, I learned a ton from Gary and from Mo, but I've learned so much about leadership from John Maxwell.
So your advice to them is go internal first, work on yourself, work on your leadership, really make sure you're the biggest learner in your business, and teaching yourself to kind of become who you need to become to lead your team, and make sure you're focusing on your people, helping take them where they want to go. But I love that. So you're the biggest project in your company. You're always working on you, trying to become.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I've also learned that we don't leave enough margin in our calendars to actually have thinking time. And you, as a leader, you've got to have time to think and plan. Because you first ask yourself the question, what if? What if we could do this by the end of the year? What if we could do that? And that's all fantastic. Once you figure out the what if, then you have the how has to come, and the how is in the planning. If you don't have any margin in your day, you're not going to have any time to plan, which just means you're going to be reactive 24/7 instead of being proactive. And that's why people don't hit their goals, because they're just reacting all the time instead of being purposeful.
How much time do you give yourself to think roughly? Like, do you time block that?
At least, and I say this, and I'm not joking, you can look at my calendar, at least 3 hours a day. Wow. And it's almost always, well, it's not almost, it's in the morning. So I get up super early. I'm one of those crazy people, but it gives me time to think. And I'll just show you, like, this is my calendar, and it's all color coded. And that's this week. And the reason it's color coded is because I can quickly look at it and see where I'm spending my time. Is it in expansion? Is it in my market centers? Is it in my personal life? Is it in consulting other businesses? So I can see just super fast where I'm spending my time.
That's great. So what changed about the way you lead and communicate your team now that you kind of aren't sitting in the office in those locations? What changed there?
Number one, we have a daily stand-up every day at 8:15 Arizona time. Now, I'm coming to you from Florida, so I'm not on that call today. Someone else is leading it, but we have the daily stand-up. The daily stand-up is really to make sure that we're all super clear on what the big rocks are for the week. That if there's any roadblocks that have come up that they need help with, that we all can chip in and help one another. Also, we talk about the message of the moment. What are we communicating? Because we have several calls through the week and different people are on different calls. And what is our primary message that we want to get across? Because, so I guess that's a long way of saying communication is the number one thing, is making sure that there's clarity in the vision, because it's more important to have clarity in the vision than the expected result. Because if you have a super clear vision and then you have a roadmap on how to get there, the chances of you getting lost are slim.
Okay. What do you feel, one of the questions is what do you feel was the most critical hire you made for your team that kind of launched you up north?
So when I first started, my first 3 hires, and I had not read MREA, I was with RE/MAX and I didn't know what I didn't know. And it was just pure luck that I did it right. But my first 3 hires were admin. My first hire was a listing coordinator. My second hire was a closing coordinator. My third hire was a marketing coordinator. So, and then I hired a buyer specialist. So we were a team of 5, and that was the year that we, that closed the 355 transactions. So I would say we were a well-oiled machine. Literally, I would go on 5 or 6 listing appointments a day. And, I had a pretty high success rate if I wanted the listing. And so we were just a machine. I think the piece that lacked though is we weren't really clear, and that's on me. I wasn't really clear on what my real purpose was. And if you're not clear on your purpose, your team isn't going to be clear either, because it has to be more than just selling another house. I mean, obviously selling homes is super important, but I think, so we started working on that, and it is a work in progress. Every year, we get together and we look at it again and see, do we want to change anything? Do we want to add something to it? And that's our mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspective. Prior to that, here was our mission. We want to have fun helping people making money. That was it. That was it.
Sure.
And that was kind of an internal thing. So we really started working on it because Gary really challenged, he called it the pirate group, to do that. But it was so wordy that I don't know if everyone had clarity on it throughout the organization. But I can guarantee you today, the people in our organization are super clear on who we are, because it really, we boiled it down to what we call our 4 Gs. Grit. You don't want to be on our team unless you're gritty. Grace. Do we give grace to people even though it's not deserved? Growth. Do we have a growth mindset? And then giving. Do we give to those in need, even though it might hurt a little bit? So it's our 4 Gs. And honestly, you can look at anywhere in our mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspective, and that's what you will see. And then my biggest question after that is, do we have the evidence that we actually walk it out? And that comes back through our surveys with our agents, our surveys with our clients and customers. And we're always evaluating to make sure, are we walking this out or not? And so if you think about it, people say, well, what are your standards? What I would say is that if you are hiring people that are gritty and they give grace and they want to grow and they're giving, you're just not going to have to worry about standards. The standards show up.
Yeah. I love that grit is like one of the top, because it's literally, I think, the most prevalent characteristic that top real estate producers have is grit. It's like one of those key ultimate success things that I've been interviewing real estate people for a long time, and they all have that sign kind of in their blood. They are gritty. They're not afraid of the business. Kristan, I'm sorry. Finish yours, and then I got a question.
In the book by Angela Duckworth, where she talks about grit, she said, there's really 2 things that primarily make you gritty, and grit is more important than natural talent. And she said, one is passion. Are you passionate? And we know lots of people who are passionate, but she says the second one, not that many people have. And Gary calls it the 1%ers. And that is, do you have perseverance? And that's that. Are you willing to get up every day, even though you don't see immediate progress, and continue and continue and continue and never give up? And I think that's what makes a gritty person.
That's awesome. All right, so Andrew has a question. He says, Kristan, do you have a sample agenda for your daily stand-up, or can you dive a little bit deeper into that? Like, what does your daily stand-up look like?
Yeah, so on Tuesdays, so on Mondays, I do one-on-ones with my leadership group. So we don't have a daily stand-up that day because I'm doing all the one-on-ones. On Tuesday, so it's really our first stand-up of the week. I ask everybody what their 3 big rocks are for the week. It's not the 25 things, it's 3 big rocks, and they articulate what they are and how they're going to accomplish them and why they're important. And then I ask them if they have any roadblocks that we need to talk about, or are there any agents inside of our organization that need attention? Is there something not working in our systems? Is there something new we need to create? Because we create playbooks for everything. And so that's kind of the conversation on, and then we also talk about what are we going to discuss on our Friday call? Because we have different calls during the week, but the Friday call is the one that I lead, and it's across the entire organization, which we have about 166 people. And not all of them get on the call every week, but so we just kind of marinate and, suggestions, whiteboard out what would be a great thing to talk about on Friday. And then on Tuesday, we're working on the Friday call. So we'll ask everybody, again, if they've got any roadblocks, but then we really spend a lot of time working on the Friday call. And then our director of operations starts creating the slides for them. And honestly, we look at them every single day till Friday, because that call, we don't wing it. It's super purposeful. And we want to make sure that we're communicating well, that we're showing that we're walking out our vision, and that we care about our people. And so every Friday on our Friday call, I select something out of our mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspective that's tied to one of our agents where I saw them actually walking it out. And so we see it on the screen every Friday. And then I tell a story about one of the perspectives or something. And so that's part of our Friday call. And then what we've been talking about lately is also, what's the missing, what's missing right now? Let me say it differently. Because of COVID, where is there an opportunity that no one's paying attention to, that we can pay attention to? Yeah. So the general framework is pretty similar, but I would say on Tuesdays, 3 big rocks. On Fridays, how did you do? How can we help you? And what I've found is that because we've narrowed our focus on time frame and we focus on the 3 big rocks, our execution has gone way up. Yeah.
So you kind of set the priorities for the week, and then you go, hey, did our audio match our video? Did we say what we're going to do? That is great. So Steve Schmitz has a question. He says, grit, grace, growth, giving. Is that part of all your expansion teams guiding principles, or do they have their own?
Whatever we do in one place, we do in all places.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay. Right now we're getting ready for Pi Day, and the execution may look a little different in all locations, but last year we gave away over 1,000 pies. But the number of referrals that we got in Alaska, we got 66. I remember that number. So it's really set our first quarter up.
Yeah.
It's just
so
purposeful.
Yeah, Lisa has a question. She says, Kristan, how are you able to retain your highly talented buyer specialists on your team?
Because we know what I can tell you it is. Her name is Michelle, the highest buyer specialist in Alaska, and she actually cashed in her some of her 401k money in order to go into real estate, because she was brand new. She was brand new a year ago in May. She's already the #1 lead buyer's agent. And the way that we retain her is number one, we know what she wants. We know where she wants to go. And our whole thing is always, I'm always talking to Christy about what is she doing to help Michelle get where she wants to go? Because if they feel like they can get where they want to go with and through you in your world, and they can get there faster, you're not going to have a problem retaining them. Where the problems come up, and probably my biggest mistake as a leader is I'm not quite sure how to articulate this, but basically, when I used to be marketing enhanced and marketing based and prospecting enhanced, there was a lot of expectation and I deserve mentality on the buyer agents team. And when you are given leads all the time and given appointments, it sets up an expectation that is just not realistic, and it's not healthy. So we flipped it, and this is probably 7 years ago, to being highly prospecting based and marketing enhanced. And because I felt like it needs to be everyone working together, meaning I'm bringing leads, you're bringing leads because you're prospecting. It's like, and I think that was a lot healthier way to do it, because I tell them all the time, I am not the government. Handout for you. We both need to be doing this. But I would say it's just, if you do the motivational piece with them, and if you see one of your agents kind of getting wonky, go back and do it again, because you'll figure out what's going on and how to help them.
That's great. I'm super glad you said that. I think there's a few rainmakers on the call that if they made that same switch from marketing based to prospecting based first, I think that would make a big impact on their business. So that's great. Jared has a question. How many assistants did you have before hiring your first buyer's agent? It sounded like you went over pretty quick, but it sounded like you had 5 staff members. Oh, you had 3. Okay.
3. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
3 and me.
3 and you. Okay. Awesome. And then Lisa has a question. If a team wanted to scale from 25 million to 40 million over the next 2 years, what would be your advice to them?
Get more people.
Right?
Honestly, because everybody only has so much capacity. And Caleb, I'm not going to I can't make you do what you don't want to do. We have a gal in Alaska, and she's super happy doing 2 transactions a month, and you're not going to push her to do more. And so am I okay that that's her goal? That's what she wants. Yeah, I kind of am. But I have another one that does 7 or 8 a month, and she's like, we call her Crusher. We call one of them Killer and the other one Crusher. Because they just are just workhorses, but they love it. That's what they love. And so, you can't make somebody do what they don't want to do. So you have to understand that if you want to grow your business, you're not going to, if you want to try to go from 25 million to 40 million with the people that you've got, it's probably not going to work, because there's the only one that probably wants to work that hard is you. And all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. So you're going to have to hire more agents if you want to go there.
Yeah, Jared, so that makes perfect sense. And he's heard that multiple times now from mega agents. So thank you for that. Give us one of your biggest challenges of running a big organization, or maybe if you could think back to maybe before you started doing expansion, what were some of the biggest hurdles that you had to overcome, being just a team leader, running your team as the rainmaker?
My attitude. And I say that because I did not want to sit down and talk to the buyer's agents every week. I really didn't want to do that. Well, if you don't want to do it, then you probably don't do it very well. And I didn't do their 411s very well. And I had to make a decision. I either needed to hire a sales manager to do that, or I had to get over myself and accept the fact that they are part of our organization and I need to do a better job. The second thing I learned is that agents come and go, but you better take great care of your admin team, because that is the secret sauce of your organization. And so it was really just my own mindset. I had to get my mind changed.
Well, I think that brings us to the first topic we talked about. What a humble attitude going, you looked in the mirror and you said, you know what, I got to change. I got to work on me. I really hope the rainmakers are hearing this right now, where anytime we want to grow, the first person we got to work on is ourselves, and really, truly, just like you did, look at ourselves in the mirror and go, okay, what do I have to change? What is in my eye that is blocking me from seeing what I need to see first? And then go into your company. So
I'll give you an example. If you don't mind, would you role play with me for a minute?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to show you how 10 years ago, how I would have had a buyer consultation. Now let's pretend that your goal was to have 40 connections this week and set 2 appointments, okay?
Okay.
And,
Awesome.
and you didn't.
Okay.
So Caleb, what happened this week?
Oh, I had these buyers. I had to show them 15 houses, and they went all over the country, and I spent too much time on that maybe one set of buyers.
Caleb, why would you do that? We've had the conversation about setting expectations. Why would you do that? That's crazy.
Because I'm not very smart, apparently.
Well, what do what the heck? You didn't hit your goal, so are you going to work this weekend or what?
I really wanted to go to my kid's soccer game, but I guess
What? Are you kidding me? Send your wife. You guys think I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. Today it would go like this. Hey, Caleb, I saw what your goals were, and I kind of see where you're at. What worked really well for you this week?
Well, I was able to get about half of my connections that I wanted to. And when I time blocked for that, I was able to really kind of hammer them out.
Wow, good for you. What was the result of that when you did it really well?
I actually felt really good about myself.
Did that change anything and how you actually met with your buyers, or maybe the attitude you had when you got home?
Yeah, no, I actually, I felt in more control when in reality, like I think a lot of times in the past where when I would show a bunch of houses, I kind of felt out of control because I wasn't protecting my schedule. I was letting everybody else dictate it. And once I was able to get control of my schedule, it really helped.
When I was showing buyers too, I initially had that problem also. And I really was able to come up with a few ways of asking them some questions to set expectations. And if you want, we can role play that later today with the other buyers agents, if you think that would help.
Yeah, that would help a lot. That'd be great.
So are there any tools that you need that you don't have right now that would help you?
No, I think I have all the tools that I need. I just need to make sure that I'm time blocking my connection time to make my connections.
What do you think you need to do to make that happen? What would be one thing you could do to make that happen?
I could probably tell you and commit to it. So maybe instead of committing to 2 days, I'll do 3.
Okay. So are you willing to send me your schedule once you have it done?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know you're going to hit it this week, and I'm cheering for you. So great job.
Thank you.
Literally. And you think I'm kidding, and I'm not. I was so mad that I had to actually do the 411 that I instead of asking them questions, all I did was just make statements and barf all over them.
It felt way better. The second role play, I actually feel I want to go be a buyer's agent again.
But so I think that as the leader, if you've decided that you're going to have a team, meaning more than just you, then you also have to take the responsibility of what that means to be a leader. And that means that you have the responsibility for those people and for their families.
Yeah, awesome. What Rob asked the question about what has been the most successful compensation plan that you've had for members on your team?
Are you talking about agents?
I believe he is. Rob, if you want to give us a little more detail, I'm assuming that.
And is he talking about my hub in Alaska or expansion?
Let's go with a hub, because not a lot of people on the call have expansion yet. Sure. So let's just start there.
Here's what I would say. If you ever decide that you want to expand, come take ESO with me before you do, so we can have that conversation, because we had to learn the hard way. So, in Alaska, and we actually, again, we instituted this company-wide. We tried so many different things. Like when you first come in, you're at 30%. And then when you get this much volume, you go to 35, and you can go all the way up to 60. And it was an accounting nightmare. And you can do it at the hub, but you cannot do it with expansion because it's just craziness. So our program is, it's a 50-50 split. However, if you get to, once you close 3 million in volume, it's 55. Once you closed 8 million volume, it's 60. And I think that's the last lead. Because here's what I've also learned. If your compensation is more than 60% to the agent, you are not going to make money. You're going to go backwards. And a good friend of mine, Brad Korn in Kansas City, learned that. And he offered 70% when the market was great. Well, then when the market shifted, he had to go have that conversation and do a takeaway. And we all know what that looks like. When you do a takeaway, they usually leave. And so he had to train an entire new group of buyer's agents because he just didn't think with the end in mind. Can I sustain this over the long run? That's really the question. Does it make financial sense over the long run? And so that's the compensate, and Gary would probably even say, if you're giving them the lead, the compensation might even be less. But I've just found that most people, you have to get them away from thinking with percentages and thinking about, for instance, we came up with an Excel thing where we could just plug their numbers in. And when people come to me and say that they wanted to make more money, and what they would say is, I want a higher split. I said, well, do you want a higher split or do you want to make more money? Well, I want to make more money. If I can show you how you can do that, would that be a value? And then you just sit down and show them the program. And when they figure out that they only need to sell a half of a house or one every 2 months more to hit their goal, that it's really not a percentage problem. It's what do we need to do to hit the other goal problem?
Can you say one more time for me about the 60-40? If you're offering a 60-40 or above, what happens?
You're not going to make money. If you're offering more than 60%, under any circumstances, you are not going to make money. Okay.
Can you say it one more time? I want to repeat that one. I'm trying to drive a point home because it is a mistake I made early on in my career with my team. And I know that it's a lot of things that a lot of rainmakers struggle with. It's a very real thing, you guys. When you lack value on your teams, or you lack to see the value yourself, the quickest thing you give away is a split typically. So
that's exactly right. The more value you have, the more that entire conversation goes away.
Yeah. Steve asked, what drove you to change? What drove you? Was there a specific event that, like your old role playing, that got you to your new role playing? Was there like, what caused that? Was that just maybe a book you were reading? Like what caused it to change your attitude actually?
And everybody just breathe a second when I say this. This is not a spiritual statement. It's just, you ask the question, I'm going to give you the answer. Sitting in church and listening to some sermons, and I had a pastor at that time, it's like we would have a 9-week sermon on forgiveness. So trust me, you really understood bitterness or forgiveness after like 9 weeks. But I thought to myself, so I like being efficient. And what I learned is that I usually always felt bad after I had the first conversation. And so then I'd have to go back and ask them to forgive me. And then, and then I'd have to undo all the damage that I did. And I thought, why didn't I just do it right? So initially it was about efficiency. I'm just being honest. And I didn't like cleaning up all my messes. But after that, it was like, I saw the difference in people when you asked them questions and genuinely had concern for them and their family. And that really changed everything. But that's kind of the sequence, because you don't just wake up one day and go, I need to do this differently. Well, you do, but then walking it out is another thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions is, what is like the most unquestionable must-have value add services that a rainmaker needs to provide to his or her team?
Now, when I say this, I mean, obviously having a closing coordinator, listing coordinator, all that's important, but I'd say it's the relationship you have with them. And I would have never understood that, but I can just tell you today, after 36 years, that it's the relationship you have with your people is the number one thing. And so, being those 411s, sitting down with them once a week and asking them about their business and how they're doing, and do they need any help? Is there anything else they need? And sitting, having the buyer meeting with the buyer's agents to tell them what listings are. It really is about the relationship. It is the glue that holds it together. I have somebody on my team right now. She's worked for me now for 24 years. And 2 of the other ones worked for me for 13 years. So those were my first 3 hires. And the only reason the other 2 left, it was an issue. One of them's mom got really ill in Idaho. And so it was that kind of thing. It wasn't that they left because they went to get another job. But so I would just say it's the relationship with your people. Number 1, value. Okay.
Biggest value. How about the challenges right now some of our teams face is hiring? What do you recommend with a team with maybe a higher turnover rate, or they're not seeing kind of like that return on investment with their first hire?
Take 30, 60, 90 so that you understand when you make your first hire, you're real clear that this is for 30 days at a time. And that way, if for some reason, their audio isn't matching their video when in that first 30 days, you can move in a different direction, and it's not as painful. And I say that because you set the expectation. Most of us, hire way too fast and fire way too slow. So if that's happening to you, I strongly suggest you take career visioning and 30, 60, 90 and success through others, because this career vision will teach you how to find and attract talent. 30, 60, 90 will explain to you how to take that talent and get them to a mastery level of their 20%, not a mastery of everything, of their 20% in like the first 90 days. And the success through others teaches you how as a leader to be so involved in them that they never want to leave you, because you're always making room for more opportunity for them.
I have one more drill down question that I had from that I personally have. What your team, when you were selling and actively selling at first, where was your hub, or where was your team first?
Wasilla, Alaska.
Wasilla, Alaska. What's the population?
At the time, they're including the outskirts, it was about 20,000 households. 20,000
households. Okay. And how many houses were you selling roughly?
The highest when I was selling was 355.
355. What percent market share did your team have? Do you remember that by chance?
Of course I remember that. There was about 1,250 houses sold that year. So we had just shy of about 25% market share.
So 25% market share, you guys. Those of you who think like your team is starting to max out, you might be, you're not sure if you can push your team any higher. Most of we have some really small markets around. Green Bay has about 100,000, but it's got surrounding markets. And then we've got people now out on the outskirts of that where they're just smaller markets. But I just wanted to have them see that as inspiration from you about what's possible with your guys' teams, even because sometimes we hear that location is a factor of why people can't be success, and you're a testament to why that is not the case. That's actually a limiting belief.
It's actually easier to become it's easier to take market share in a small market. It's a lot easier. And honestly, what happened is at some point, and I said to Gary, I said, I want to grow, but I don't know, what am I going to do? And he said, you're going to have to go to new pools of opportunity. He said, because Kristan, the marginal the cost for you to get another deal, you'd be better off taking that same money and go where your leads are naturally, organically taking you, which was into Anchorage. So that's actually why I expanded the first time. And this was before we started expansion with Keller Williams. And it was into Anchorage, and that was in 2012. And Charlie, who was my first expansion partner, is still one of my expansion partners in Anchorage. But it was because the leads were naturally taking us there. So the way for us to continue to grow was to go into Anchorage, which was about 45 miles away.
Okay, so so it was just like a natural progression. You didn't force it. You just said, okay, we're just starting to get leads over in that area. I could use that as like somebody in Hudson, Wisconsin, and then they can maybe start getting leads in Eau Claire or Appleton. A natural place would be Green Bay, or vice versa for people on our call. It just was
the easiest expansion on the planet. It's still the most profitable location on the planet because it's organic. It just was naturally happening.
What do you think caused that natural organic growth? What was it?
Yeah, it's because we're a bedroom community of Anchorage. So there are about 25,000 people a day that commute back and forth. And so they live in the valley, which is where Wasilla is, but they work in Anchorage. And so, and years and years of, us calling them. But what naturally, you have people that would move into Anchorage, and then they would want to, so I remember I was at the airport one morning and we were going to Hawaii, and the guy checking me, and he's like, "You're that real estate person in Wasilla?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, can you sell my blah, blah, blah?" And it was a bunch of lots that he had. And so it was just one of those things that just naturally, it's kind of like how Ben Kenny came down the I-5 corridor. It's you go down one level, and then those people spill over here. So then you have another ring, and it spills over in another ring. And it's just, that's the easiest and most profitable way to do it for sure.
natural progression, and just because we got a couple people on the call that have ambition to expand. So I wanted them to hear that as well. We have one technical question. Like if you have a much tougher property to sell, like how do you guys, maybe it's in an area that, there's not as much of a population, it's just a tougher sell. What do you guys do? Like, do you guys cold call around that listing? Do you guys, what do you guys teach your team?
Yeah, so we circle prospect around that listing. We also do a reverse lookup in Kelly to find out where are people moving from to that location. And so then we'll do some Facebook ads about that property in that location. Like right now we have a $1.6 million listing on Anderson Lake, which is in Wasilla. So we did a reverse lookup to see where are the locations of the most likely buyer that would want to buy that property if they weren't in Alaska or weren't in Wasilla. And so then we did Facebook ads specific to those locations that had a landing page back there. I know that sounds like gobbledygook, and I'm really not the expert. What I can tell you is that that's so when we have a unique property, that's what we do. We look at where the most likely buyer would be coming from if they were coming from outside of that city. And we're talking like spending $20 on Facebook, not a lot of money because we do it through command. And it's been very, very successful. We've had a ton of success with Facebook ads in command. Yeah,
so we've just been starting to experiment in that, and it is really, I can't believe how cheap some of these leads can come in. We just did a video, which actually I hope all of our rainmakers watch. Karri spent $16.84 on an ad, you guys, and her GCI that came back off of that $16 ad was $16,000 because she sold a listing right away. And she even referred the buyer that came in. She didn't even work with the buyer. So
let me just say something about that listing, Caleb, because that really came from a strategy session where we said, where's an opportunity that nobody's paying attention to? And one of the opportunities that we found is people that have second homes. Most people, 71% of people who have second homes own them free and clear. Well, let's be honest, unless it's drivable, most people who own second homes did not go to their second home this year. And so we thought, well, what if there are people who are maybe they're a little more conservative, and maybe since they can't go use that property, maybe they might consider selling. So we actually started actively marketing to those people who had second homes. That's how we got the $1.6 million listing on Anderson Lake. And she was a client. She moved to Arizona, became a client down there, and we were marketing to her, and then called me and we listed the property, or I didn't, but Christy listed the property in Alaska. So it's just another way to think about what could you go find where the opportunity is, and then how do you go out and get in front of it?
So good. So good. Thank you so much for that. One of the questions are what expectations do you set? So like somebody new joins your organization, what are some of the expectations you set around them? Or, I know we talked a little bit about how like your standards, if you hire the right way, they kind of take care of themselves, but like what expectations for myself to join your team, what would you say?
I would say this, that we're not going to throw you off of the team. You can stay on the team, but you're not going to get our time and attention if you're not plugging in. And the reason for that is the other day, about a month ago on our leadership call, it actually came up, and they were talking about a few people who were just not performing and they just weren't plugging in. And after about 5 minutes, I stopped and I said, I want to ask you guys something. Why are we spending our precious time this morning on the people who don't want it and aren't performing, instead of spending our time talking about the people who are and how we can help them? I said, stop the conversation. I said, I know that this sounds like really top down, but we are not going to waste our time this morning for people. Now, it'd be different if they had been performing and maybe weren't, and maybe we needed to figure it out. Or if they were brand new and they were plugging in and still were struggling, that's a whole nother conversation. But when people, it's kind of like you put the food in front of them and they won't eat. I'm not going to try to figure out a way to make them eat. I'm just not. And so our philosophy is we're going to pay attention to those people who want it just as bad as us. And the rest of the people can stay on the team. We're just not going to pour our resources into them. I had my coach
became, he was a CEO for a long time, and then he retired, and he said, what my biggest mistake I made in my leadership journey was I paid attention to the losers, not the losers. He didn't say it quite like that, but he's like, I paid attention to the people that were causing problems, when he said I should have been spending 100% of the of my time on my top people.
Absolutely.
That's what he took away from his entire career. This is a really successful gentleman.
So true. It's so true. And you think about it, if you guys think about this, I want you to think about this. What would your life look like if you had all A players on your team? I mean, what do we spend our time talking about? It's the problem people, right? It's the problems. If you had all A people, your problem list would shrink. So the goal would be, how do you go out and find more A players? And I'll just say something. You can develop A players too. I don't know if Kevin's on this call, but Kevin Gardy is in Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin. And when Kevin joined our team, I don't even know if he was fully capping. I don't think he was. And Kevin's lived in a 2-bedroom condo. His wife worked. They had 1 child. They wanted another child. So I think their daughter was 10, or maybe she was 8 then. And we started working with Kevin. Kevin was one of those people, and he also worked in his church a lot. And so, coaching and working with Kevin, and Kevin wanted to build a pod underneath him. And I don't know how many Kevin has now, but I think it's like 7 or 8. The people he's recruited from outside of Keller Williams to his team, he leads them every day. He does the same thing I do for our group. He does for his group. He has his own private Facebook group, even though they engage in ours, he still, has his. And he started working. First, he started working on himself. So he started capping. Then he started recruiting. And now he looked up about 6 months ago. Well, it's a little longer than that because they had a baby boy, but they sold their condo, bought a home. His wife got pregnant. She quit her job and was able to stay at home after their son was born. And he was able to find someone to be the replacement for the main part of what he was doing in the church. He's still involved, but he's not as involved. And his whole world changed. So I want to be really clear that there are some people that all they do is need someone to come alongside them, help them, bring out the nuggets of gold inside of them and nurture them. And Kevin's a great example of that. And so, you don't really know what you have until you peel back the onion a few layers.
Yeah, Kevin, he says, I am here. He's up to 8 now. And how do people get a hold of you, Kristan, if they want to talk to you more? What's the best way do they get in touch with Kevin or yourself?
Yeah, so if they're interested, for instance, in finding out how Kevin did what he did, contact Kevin. Kevin is awesome. It's kevin@thekristancolenetwork.com. If they want to get a hold of me, and I say this only because I protect my time pretty hard. If you email support@thekristancolenetwork.com, I promise you I'll respond to you. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but I promise I will respond to you. But if you have any questions at all on how we can be of help or service, or how Kevin, you can find out what his journey has been, because Kevin's a great example of someone that just needed the rough edges shaved off a little. Yeah,
and he's running and he's doing great. So, Kristan, thank you so much for your time today. Kevin, thanks for being on the call as well. Thanks to all the rainmakers here. Could you guys, Kevin just posted his contact information. Could you guys thank Kristan, drop her some comments, like the video, share it, whatever, show her support.
Oh, if you want to give me some love, I'll give you my cell phone number.
There you go. Yes, we're gonna send her all your guys' comments, thanking her for her time. We just appreciate it. You poured into us for almost an hour now, and thank you so much. I know you're in the place where a lot of our rainmakers want to be at some point. I think you just inspired a whole bunch of people. So,
I want to say one more thing, because I just thought of it, and that's this. Kevin, he came to our event last year. This year, because of COVID and they had a new baby, he didn't. But when he came, his wife came too. And at that time she was still working. And I said, because we invite the spouses to come. And I said, why did you come? She said, because I have seen such a dramatic change in my husband. I wanted to come and figure out what the heck you guys are doing. I thought that was awesome.
That is awesome. That's super good. Yeah, the thank yous are pouring in, so we'll send them over to you, Kristan. We won't take any more of your time, but thank you so much for today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my honor. Thanks for having me.